Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for being here. Thanks for taking the time, making the time to make your improvement in your home and your homeschool a priority and for putting in the effort. Well, thank you, first of all, for doing home education, right? That's amazing. It's a ton of work. And it's so much harder to be fully engaged and to take on full responsibility and ownership for your children's education and for what's happening. So thank you. Thank you for doing that. And a lot of honor and praise to you for taking on that responsibility and for being here to want to do it well, right? Because we could avoid it and just like send them off and like whatever. Or we could take it and not really take ownership of it and want to do it well. We could just kind of go through the motions, check the boxes and say, oh, well, I did it. But you're here because you want to do better and you want to level up and you want to raise kids who who are great kids and enjoy their childhood and their life, who earn a world-class education and become genuinely happy and successful adults. Who are contributing in the world, who are making a difference and serving and helping and leading. I know in our home, we are raising leaders and the world desperately needs leadership. So thank you for being here. Thanks for being awesome. Thanks for caring. I love this stuff. Rachel and I, we've been married 21 years. We have 7 children. Our oldest are just moving out now and just tackling awesome adventures and responsibilities in life. And our youngest is 5. And we've taken our kids. I know some of you know our story and some of you don't know. Our family dream, the thing we love to do most as a family is to travel. And so far as a family, we've been able to travel to over like 35 countries and just do some what we call world schooling and go see this wonderful earth and its people and all the beautiful creations and all the great things there are, and to go out as a family and travel and have these experiences. In fact, we just got back from a 2-month road trip. We like to do big extended trips like that as a family. Last year, we did a 7-month road trip from coast to coast across the United States and 2 other countries, the full length of Mexico and Guatemala. It was amazing. And so on this trip, I got to speak 4 or 5 times to different groups and different audiences. I got to host a retreat for men, these man ventures we go on. So I have a full master class and a community of men that I lead, these great dads, husbands and fathers who are striving to be their very best selves and to lead out as men, as providers and businessmen and husbands and fathers and home educators. And then I also had the opportunity and privilege to lead a retreat for youth. And we do trips like that. We do trips for men throughout the year. We do trips for youth and retreats for youth all over the world. And we lead trips for couples, which are super awesome. Those are amazing, right? And talk about marriage and strengthening our marriages and our families and our lives. And then we do it for families too. And we have a bunch more on the calendar, on the schedule. But it's always insightful, always inspiring, always fun and exciting to spend time having adventures and get right up close in intimate, powerful conversations and to see how things are going and to go out and travel across the country, speak to several different audiences and different demographics, and to have these trips and adventures. It's like I get to put a finger on the pulse, so to speak. And I've been doing this for over 2 decades. And so I get to see what's going on, what's happening, right? And I grew up in a broken home. I was out on my own at 16, trying to figure out life. And those were brutally hard years. And I desperately wanted to get a world-class education and figure out the secrets to happiness and success and how to have an incredible marriage and to raise great children, how to provide very well and succeed in business, and how to lead out and make a positive difference in the world, and how to survive in all the chaos and the mayhem. And what's interesting is we live in one of the most fascinating and exciting times in the history of the world. And I mean that seriously. It's powerful, it's exciting, it's amazing. There's so many things going on in life right now, but it's also extremely dangerous and chaotic and messy. And you know this, right? You're seeing it, right? The world is is in turmoil. There's wars and threats of war, and there's shootings going on all over the place. And there's a lot of social division and a lot of social confusion. And there's a lot of economic uncertainty with recessions and with the whole changing world order. I'll throw out some books here for those of you who are learners and you like me, you like to geek out on this stuff. A recent book by Ray Dalio called The Changing World Order is worth reading, and big macro level of what's happening in a global perspective. The Fourth Turning, which was published in the 90s, is so relevant right now because we are in the middle of a fourth turning, or what you might call the winter. Now we're in the winter season of life, and we're right in the middle of it. And the next few years are going to be crazy, economically, socially, etc. We're already seeing that. We're just seeing the turmoil just starting to go. And so in the cycles and seasons of life, and then in our individual cycle and season of life, where you're at in your parenting, your own life journey as an individual, and then your parenting, your family, your home education, there's so much going on. And our kids are being exposed to all kinds of stuff all the time. Please, please, please do not underestimate what your kids are being exposed to. I think many parents, we just kind of roll along. We're so busy, right? We have so much going on, and we're trying to, juggle all these different things. I think even homeschooling, we kind of think our kids are sheltered and protected, but never underestimate what they're being exposed to, what they're hearing, what they're seeing online and from peers. And it's ironic, like the worst things my kids get exposed to is at church, man. We go to church and the kids there just talk about all the junk and garbage. And luckily we've built this wonderful relationship with our children, which we're going to talk about more today. These really practical principles and practices, things that are just proven, that just work to build these incredible relationships with your children and help them get a world-class education to prepare them for this onslaught of chaos and half-truths, and even just blatantly false ideas, and just all the confusion and the mayhem, all the junk that's going on out there. Like you got to have this relationship. And so we built that relationship with our kids. And so they'll go out there, hear things, come home, we talk about it, right? They're totally open, transparent about it. And these are some of the practices we'll dive into, how to actually get that going. But we've got to have a super close relationship with our kids, where we're tight, where we can talk about, in calmness and clarity, we can talk about everything that's out there. And your kids will feel comfortable to come to you and tell you the truth. It's like I heard Brian Tracy years ago say, if your kids are afraid to tell you the truth, who has made them afraid? Wow. But it's not going to happen by default. It's not just, oh yeah, my kids are always open and they're talkative and they tell us everything. It's not the case. They're just storing away so much that we never even consider. And so we have to be aware of that. They're hearing all these messages from all over the place. They're hearing advertisements and songs and movies and all kinds of stuff. And a lot of it's fantastic, and a lot of it is terrible, wretched stuff. And so we can't just assume that just because we're doing life a certain way and we keep repeating things to them, that they're going to take it and embrace it and come to the same conclusions that you and I have come to in our journey. Just not the case. And so we have to be extremely deliberate and proactive in teaching our children truth every single day. That has to be an absolute priority. We must, every day, without fail, we must be teaching truth in our homes. We had our kids memorize this little Latin phrase, and because we live by it, and I don't know how to pronounce it, I don't speak Latin, but it's veritas nunquam perit, which means truth never perishes. We can grab hold of timeless truths, things that never perish, that never become old-fashioned, which is interesting right now. And and it's ironic. It's so ironic. And those of you who are my history buffs, like I love studying history and ancient writings, because you see these cyclical patterns. And it's so ironic, even laughable. It's hilarious. People will, they think they're the first ones to come up with this progressive idea of like, oh, this is what we need to do, and get rid of all those old-fashioned ideas, right? And they think they're the first ones in human history to come up with that. And the only reason they think that is because they don't study history. Because most of these issues, if not all of them, are just being regurgitated. Literally not hundreds, thousands of years ago, these same issues were coming up, right? They come up and they surface, and then they play out. And it's always the same thing. They just play out a certain way, and you look for those patterns, and you find timeless truths across all of these great, right? The greatest thinkers and writers and poets and prophets of all time. And you study them and you research them and you understand, and you look for common denominators, like, there it is. There's a piece of truth. And it's extremely important, my friends, that we don't get in one little area and think that any group or religion or demographic of people has a monopoly on truth. That simply is not the case. There is truth all over the place. And our responsibility, especially as home educating parents, is for ourselves and for our children to seek out, identify, and embrace truth. And the key to doing that is on a daily basis. And because that daily nutrition, just like taking care of your body, eating well, day in and day out, nourishes the body, so too does consuming, seeking out, identifying, and embracing truth on a daily basis, right? And these micro doses of truth, it compounds in our favor, and it nourishes our minds and our souls and our relationships and our families and our education and our desires and all of our emotions. Everything gets nourished by seeking out truth and doing it every day. So what are some of the things that we and our youth are facing, right? There's so many hot topics right now, and it changes, right? One hot topic kind of fades off and then another one comes up, but there's all kinds of things going on. Gender confusion, even the furries, right? It's a real problem right now in the schools. And as I was able to talk to across the country here, talk to lots of youth and find out what's going on, what they're being exposed to, right? And they're so loud, and they've become the social division right now, and then the animosity. It's like it's put in a place where people are lashing out. And if you want to have an idea or a standard or a belief, you get attacked for that. And so not only do we have to identify and embrace truth and understand the whole thing, we're not going to put our heads in the sand, we're not going to put on blinders and pretend that it's not there, or just take on these just really small-minded views of like, this is just the way thing is, and I'm not even going to listen or consider anything else, right? Which is really what's happening politically, socially. Like, we want to be well-rounded, well-read, very thoughtful people who consider and understand ideas and concepts in their entirety, and then be able to articulate and communicate effectively so that we can have a voice, and so we can have correct thoughts and ideas, and be very well educated in all these concepts that matter. They're shaping social structure and the present moment, and especially the future, right? So you have gender stuff, abortion, you have the shootings going on, you have guns, right? What the fight around guns, and is it that guns are the problem, or is it that mental illness is the problem? And there is a massive mental illness pandemic in society. That there's always been an underlying problem in society, but now it's at a huge scale, and it's become quite trendy, and it's kind of off the charts, so to speak, of just the scale of anxiety and depression and mental illness and psychosis and just unraveling. and the inability of people to do hard things, or even, interestingly, the inability to even understand what hard really is. The problem of a very comfortable and easy time period in the history of the world, which the last several decades have been very comfortable, very easy, very affluent, is this idea of what's actually difficult and what's hard and what's life all about. It gets all lost. It gets all skewed because people just turn to entertainment and ease and comfort. And then you start complaining about everything. And then little things that people who lived in truly hard times, they would laugh. They would laugh at the things that we complain about, think are so hard. And, oh, I had such a bad day, and oh, my life's so terrible because I do these things. Can you imagine complaining about what you're facing to somebody like Viktor Frankl, or Louis Zamperini, or Corrie ten Boom, right? Or Edith Eger, right? And those are World War II stories, right? And great books. Can you imagine, like, oh yeah, this, that, really? Seriously? Right? It gets skewed, and we spend our lives in entertainment. But this isn't the first time that that's happened either. It's happened so many times throughout history. We watch when they move into very affluent time periods, then they turn to entertainment, ease and comfort and safety, and they're seeking all those things, and that inevitably leads to a deterioration in society. Those are some of the things we're facing: social division, political contention, woke philosophies, social media and Netflix and video games and AI and AR, like all of these things that are distorting reality. And again, please do not underestimate what your kids are being exposed to. And they may not be articulating it to you. They may not know how to articulate it. They may not be sharing. They can't. You can't possibly. We're exposed to so much. You couldn't possibly explain to another person how much you're seeing and being exposed to every day. It's just the amount is just too much. And so we're in this time period where it's extremely difficult to even keep hold of reality, because so much that's being offered isn't real. And there's so many facades and masks and so much pretense and so many wrong messages, just constantly bombarded. You and I and our children are being bombarded with all these messages of, like, this is the way, and 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 this is what life is like, and this is what life is like. And it's from all over the place. And we have to be able to see all that and filter through it and think through it and talk about it and get to a really solid place where we are grounded and whole inside and out, where we feel strong mentally and emotionally and spiritually and physically, and where we are genuinely happy and successful, where we're setting and achieving objectives and goals, and we have the family life that we dreamed of and the lifestyle we dreamed of, and we're all earning a genuinely world-class education, right? Which is, it's possible. And we're doing it in our family. And if I can do it, anyone can do it. If I can come from where I started to get to where we are and where we're going, then you can too. Anyone can. And there's just certain principles and practices that just work. And it comes down to implementing those and putting them into habit and into practice, right? Because I've long believed and taught and seen it again and again. You tell me your habits, and I can tell you your future. Because your habits, you make habits, and then your habits make you, and they make your life, and they make your lifestyle, and they make your future. And so the habits that we are forming consciously or unconsciously for ourselves and our family dynamics, family culture, family legacy, and the habits that we're instilling in our kids are the determining factors for how they will live and who they'll become, and how they will engage with other people and with life. So let's dive in. What are the key principles and practices to help our children be prepared mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, socially, financially for the chaos and the messiness and the craziness of the time that they're being raised in. And so again, it'll be very different, right, for our little kids and for those of our older kids who are literally launching into adulthood right now, right in the middle of a fourth turning and a changing world order and all this stuff that's going on. And see, you and I, again, we got to reiterate this. You and I, we had technology introduced to us in our life. We kind of grew up just with a little bit of it. Our children have never known life without it, right? It has existed for our kids' whole lifetime. And so we can't assume that they'll come to the same conclusions that we did or have or are. And we can't assume that they'll have the same relationship with it that we do. And it's fascinating. We have to think through those things and talk through those things and not hide from them, not a full hard black and white rejection or acceptance, but really think through carefully how to navigate all these very complex and difficult issues. And be careful not to just take one solid stand on one side or the other, right? With abortion, for example, is a good, and Rachel and I did this on our podcast. So Rachel and I do a podcast together called the Extraordinary Family Life podcast. And then I have a podcast I do for men. It's called Be the Man podcast. And Rachel and I did one about abortion as one example where, for the most part, abortion, right, killing a fetus, a baby, taking human life, yeah, wrong, right? But is there ever an instance when it could be the right thing to do, or at least necessary? And when you get out and meet enough people and think through enough scenarios, then yeah, boy, there's definitely some times, and I've met people all over the world, right, where there's definitely some times where, yeah, there most definitely are exceptions to the rule. And then you start thinking back with your kids. Here's just an example, right? You start thinking through this and talking through it, like, well, what is it we're actually arguing for here? And if we got to teach our kids how to do this, how to think through this. If we go back upstream, so to speak, Rachel and I love to talk about just going back upstream. What happened up here that caused these things down here? What were those choices farther upstream? What is it we're actually talking about here? And this is one of my all-time favorite questions. What's the underlying cause of the underlying problem? And you get way back up there and you're like, wow, right? It changes the whole dynamic. We think this is the problem. We have to figure out how to solve it and regulate it and legislate it and do all this stuff. We say, well, wait a minute. If we go back upstream, what's the underlying cause of the underlying problem? And you can do this with almost every aspect of life and train yourself and your children how to do this, how to walk through those things and how to think and how to wrap our heads around these ideas. And this is why we do, so Rachel and I lead a home education group coaching, and we meet every 3 weeks with this amazing group of people. I'm sure some of you are already in there. And we do this, every few weeks we get on, we talk about relevant subjects and topics and ideas and how to address very specific issues. The last one we just did was how to help our kids with device usage. And so it just doesn't monopolize or dominate their lives, but how to use technology as a tool and not a toy, and how to keep it as a tool instead of a self-destructing weapon. And we talk through what curriculum to use, what books, what resources, what tools, what strategies, what's working. And when you're facing things with little kids or big kids, and how to make sure that the quality of your marriage is positively influencing your home education and your relationship with your kids and parenting styles and philosophies, all this stuff. That's why we do that coaching. It's so powerful, so good to have a group of people, because none of us is as smart as all of us. And we all come together and just talk through, like, how can we do the very best job so our kids are truly, truly happy and fulfilled, and they don't have this huge void and emptiness, and they're not hurting here, and that the relationship isn't constantly strained. In the work I get to work with people every single day, and I get to deal with some of the tragedies too, with horrible fights and even suicide attempts and terrible addictions that are just destroying lives, and with adults and with youth. And then on the other side, I get to see the results of these proven principles and practices where there's connection and harmony and achievement and growth and grit and success, where we get to cheer our kids along and celebrate instead of nag and drag and push and worry and strain as kids make poor choices chronically. Like it's really these two paths where they're stumbling and struggling and hurting, and you feel like you're losing this connection. There's a huge wedge, or this deep connection where that the connection with your kids as they're growing up, you're becoming great friends with your kids and eventually with their spouses and the grandkids, and this beautiful family legacy. Oh man, this stuff is awesome. Okay, so let's dive in. I want to reiterate here, you must deliberately and proactively teach truth in your home every single day. And you have to do it tactfully and with diplomacy. Otherwise you sound like they'll resist it, right? Because it's like, oh man, here we go again. Like the way you deliver it matters. And you might think, well, no, it's just truth is truth and truth is beautiful. Just accept it. Well, that's like making some amazing meal. You could literally make the best meal on the planet, and then your delivery could ruin it all. You take this gorgeous, gorgeous meal, and let's say, for argument's sake, it is the best food on the planet. And you just you get so excited. You're like, this is amazing. You just take a handful of it and you shove it in their face and like, you gotta try this. Here, take some. And just because of the delivery, they're gonna be like, I'm out. And you're like, what, don't you like it? You don't like this? What's your problem? What's wrong with you? This is the best. It's you, what's wrong? And it's the delivery, right? You could take something that's absolutely magical and ruin it in delivery. And so the delivery has to be good. And then if the delivery's good, and that takes skill and effort and strategy, and if the delivery's good, you're delivering something amazing, but or let's say your delivery is amazing, but what you're offering is pretty empty. There's no calories, right? And so maybe you've nailed delivery, but what you're offering your kids, like there's nothing there. There's no substance. There's no relevance. And so you're just like, ooh, boom, this is good. And they're just like, I got nothing. I'm getting no nutritional value from what you're offering me. And so kind of the underlying basis here, the foundation of all this is it has to be great. It has to be relevant. It has to be filling and satisfying. And it has to be delivered very well. And that takes strategy and tactics. Again, why we do the home education coaching every month, right? More than just once a month. And we have tons of tools and resources in there because this takes a lot of art and science. And it takes a lot of effort and thought and practice and experimentation to see what works. And just when you think it's working, your kids grow up and they change, and now you got to do something else. And then what worked for one kid won't work for another. And so you got to be on your toes, and you got to be filling your mind and soul all the time so you're ready. You cannot give what you don't have. And none of us can draw from an empty well. And so we have to fill our own well. Okay, let's dive in. So number one, ask lots of questions, but not as an interrogator, but in a curious way, in a thoughtful way, in a way that draws things out. So this practice number one, ask lots of questions. Ask your kids questions all the time, and learn how to listen well. I get to observe parents and families and home educators all the time. I get to speak and present and interact with them. And I'm always very observant. I'm just watching people literally across 5 continents, and over 2 decades I've been doing this. And so I get to watch, and some parents just are terrible at asking questions, or don't ask them. They just want to talk all the time. Or they're terrible at listening. They might ask you a good question, but then they don't listen. Whatever, they're around. They're not really engaging. They're not hearing. Let your kids think and wrestle with an idea. Let them struggle there. Don't just fill the silence. Train your kids, practice, like give them this chance to articulate their ideas and try to wrap their minds around it. Remember, they're kids. Their brains are still developing and changing. They're learning, they're experiencing things. They're not comprehending it all, just like you and I didn't when we were younger, and still don't now. And so let them formulate those ideas, kind of ask more questions, walk them through the dialogue. Avoid the temptation to just constantly give them answers and tell them what to think. I see that far too often. And maybe particularly with home educators, is we so desperately want to give our kids the answers. We want to tell them what to think. And I've seen this all the way down to youth who they don't even know their own preferences or likes, or they don't have their own ideas. Or I've seen them say, hey, what do you like to do? What kind of music do you like? Or what kind of books do you like to read? What do you think about this? And it's amazing. I can see what's going on in the home because the kids immediately look to their parents. Like, tell me what I should say. And they wouldn't even know, like, hey, what do you think about this? And the kid's like, oh, look over the parents. And what happens? The parent gives the answer for the kid. And I'm like, nope. Allow your children to think, analyze, explore, and wrestle. Allow them to make mistakes and kind of think through it, and ask them, say, that's interesting. How might that play out? Or is there another view about that? And learn how to create dialogue. Learn how to walk them through these discussions. You have to be having discussion all the time. So number 1, make sure you're asking lots and lots of questions. Stop giving them all the answers and teach them to think for themselves. Number 2, read voraciously yourself every single day. Every single day, read from great books. My wife put out a great book list. I have a book list that's free. It's on my app. The Be the Man app is a specific reading list for men. But then on my website, gregdenning.com or extraordinaryfamilylife.com, we have recommended book lists. I've read well over 1,000 books. And I've listened there for all kinds of genres or ideas or specific topics, and they're all my favorite books. But every single day, without fail, read. I mean, miss a meal if you have to, but do not miss a chance to feed your mind. Be reading voraciously and read across time and space and across genre. Make sure you're spending plenty of time in the classics. Now, you know this already, right? But are you doing it? And some of it's common sense, but it doesn't mean it's common practice. So it's a great opportunity to really evaluate, like, are we doing this? We talk the talk, we know this stuff, but are you doing it day in and day out? Am I reading? Am I learning? Am I asking questions? Are we practicing thinking? Are you talking about in your family, are you talking about these difficult and confusing subjects? The relevant things that are happening in society? And if you are you just telling them what to think? Are you jumping in the same bandwagon with the political, one side or the other? Or, well, this is the way it is, black and white. Are you thinking through it, talking through it, allowing them to have an opinion and to wrestle with it all? We got to practice this stuff. So don't believe everything you read, and certainly don't believe everything you think. And look for common denominators. Again, get all the best books, read through them, and find, like, wait a minute, this great thinker and this great leader and this great prophet and this great teacher. And look for those common denominators and find, like, what's worked across time and space, and realize that these ideas aren't old-fashioned, they're timeless because they just work. See the bigger picture, okay? Next. One thought on that. Homeschooling is a huge strength, and I am a massive advocate for home education. But every strength has an inherent weakness. And one of the inherent weaknesses of home education is it can become a very enclosed echo chamber. And in our, I think, good desire to kind of protect and seclude, have like a greenhouse effect, it can get too small. And then we miss out on exposure to bigger ideas and other ways of thinking and living, things that might be limiting us because it gets too tight. And you can get in this little teeny box, little bubble, and just have your little ideas there. And that's all you do. That's all you think. And you're missing out on so much more that's available. So make sure you're reading across all kinds of genres. Next, read to your children, even your older children. Every single night, I read from a classic to my little girls. And then when the big kids are around and in the house, we are reading and discussing ideas. We listen to a ton of audiobooks. All of our kids listen to audiobooks. And we'll read them or listen to them separately and then discuss them. And we'll also read books together. We'll just read sections in our morning devotionals, like morning routines, and in the evening. Make sure you're reading some great things and then discussing them and sharing them. We'll grab little audio clips. We have a little family chat for the older kids with the teens. And if Rachel or I listen to something we really like, grab a section and share it with them, or a quote and throw it over there, or a story or example, like, oh man, look what just happened. Boom, throw this out there. What do you think about that? What do you think about what's going on in society right now? What do you think about this ancient idea? What do you think about happening in this society or in this part of history, or what's coming on the horizon here? And we're just constantly discussing that. So read to your little children, read to your older children. Read constantly, share what you're reading. Make sure you're just teaching truth. Sometimes well, if you aren't reading, you got to start reading and listening. Make time for it. This is one, like there's no exceptions to this. I know you're busy. I know you have so much going on. This is critical. This is a non-negotiable. You've got to be reading from great books, listening to great books. Now, you can actually listen at faster speeds, 1.5 or 2. Your mind will get used to it, your ears get used to it, and it doesn't decrease comprehension. Like you get used to it, you can consume a lot of material. And again, it's not about getting through the book, it's about getting the book through you. Same with our kids. And so we're reading, we're discussing, sharing ideas and principles, but make sure that's happening all the time. Next, have regular devotionals and discussions. Make it part of your family culture and your family legacy. We have awesome discussions all the time. And it's such a joy. Every morning, it's just a joy to sit down, talk about great ideas, just connect with your kids and teach them the principles and the practices and the habits. What is it that makes a truly happy and successful life? And then have discussions on long road trips, or in the evenings when you're sitting around, or we're just out playing, having adventures, just talk about those ideas. So make sure that discussions, good, thoughtful discussions where everyone has a chance to participate and really think and see things differently and challenge ideas and kind of debate, right, in a healthy way, and keep calming your emotions. Make sure that's part of your family legacy. Next, have a reading list for your kids. So even in my list that I have, the reading list, there's a massive section there for youth, and then an additional one for boys especially. But make sure your kids have a reading list, and there's a list there that they're working on, right? Have a list up, put it on your fridge, put it on the wall, just say, here are the books you can read from. Make sure you have those books available, and anything that catches their attention. So, you want to read that one? Boom, I'll get it. If your kids want to read a book or listen to a book, get it for them. We spend thousands and thousands of dollars buying books all the time, audiobooks and real books. And Rachel just came home to the store today and just brought home a big old stack of brand new books for the little ones, books for our teenagers. And like, here you go, here's some more books. And she and I just both got on Amazon and ordered a bunch more books. We're just constantly having books move through the house, right? Whatever catches their attention, get it to them. But make sure you have kind of a reading list, like, hey, at some point, you got to read these great books. They're life changers, right? And so we went up there and just say, okay, which one you doing next? Which one you doing next? And get them. And maybe they try and they're not quite ready for it, and they come back to it later. But always have a good list of great books that they're going through. Next, audios, podcasts, movies, discuss them, right? Don't assume your kids will come to the same conclusions. A lot of the movies that are coming out right now, the most popular movies, are infiltrated with all kinds of woke philosophies and other ideologies and I mean, there's some really great stuff coming out, and there's some really warped, wrested, W-R-E-S-T. Rest means to twist or distort. There's some really wrested philosophies and ideologies coming out. And again, I can say that with confidence because when you study history, you see how those pop up in societies, and they usually pop up towards the end of a collapse of a civilization. And you see it again and again and again and again and again. And they think, oh, it's a new idea and it's progressive. And they're like, no, it's not. We've heard this before, same old thing. And this is the result. This is what happens. And so your kids, they're watching this stuff and they're getting just filled with this stuff. You got to walk through that and talk through it. Watch some really, really popular, big hit movies recently. And Rachel and I were like, whoa, kids, did you catch that? And I'm like, catch what? Like, look what they just done. Like, did you see it? No, we didn't see anything. We were just watching the movie. Thought it was a great movie. Like, whoa, what's the message? They had this character do this and this character do this. Like, what message are they portraying right there? You're like, wow, this is the message. And then we talk through it. What do you think? Does that sound true, real, accurate? How will that play out? How will it play out in an individual? How will it play in a family? How will it play out in society? Let's walk through this. How has that played out before in history? Where have we seen this before in history? In other societies and civilizations? How did it work out for them, right? How does this align with just the principles of psychology and sociology and spirituality and life, right? It's amazing. Just have those discussions. Make sure you're catching on to that. Next. Practice articulating ideas and sharing them with others. So practice listening, especially to people who have opposite ideas from you. This is a skill, and I would say most people still struggle with it. We get these feelings of animosity, right? Can you like and even love someone who has extremely different ideas from you, that believes the opposite? It's interesting. We've gotten to this place where if somebody has a different view than I do, it's almost like, I can't like them. I can't love them. We can't be good neighbors. We definitely can't be friends because they believe differently. And that's just not the case, right? So practice hearing them out, and don't just grab hold of your little idea and say, this is the only way it is. There's nothing to it. Try to understand, think through their perspective. Why do they believe that? Why do they think that? Ask them, say, that's really interesting. I have a different perspective, but I'd like to understand why you believe that, why you think that way. Well, that's fascinating. And you'll be surprised what you pick up, what you understand. You don't have to necessarily change your ideas. It might alter the way you see it, your perspective or paradigm, your angle. And teach your kids how to do the same thing. Teach your kids how to listen, how to understand, how to be. I just did this episode on the Be the Man podcast about half-truths and all the half-truths in society that feel really good and sound really good. And you want to grab a hold of them and think, oh, that's great. I want that in my life. But it's a half-truth that actually gets us into a lot of trouble, like compassion. Compassion is a half-truth. Tolerance, it's a half-truth, right? Both of them sound great. You feel great. You're like, yeah, I want to be tolerant. I want to be compassionate. Those are only half true, because taken too far, both of those actually become a vice. They are no longer a virtue. And you'll have to listen to the podcast to get the rest of that. But think through those things and teach your kids those things. So yeah, I can listen, I can understand, I can hear, I can still love and like and appreciate, but I have an understanding. I think through this. So teach your kids to have those discussions. Teach them, give them the tools to be able to articulate well what they think, what they believe, and be able to engage in the dialogue, in the great debate, and the current debates of society. So give them a voice. Otherwise, they just feel like they have to stay quiet. And if they speak up, they just get torn to pieces. So give them the tools, practice that so they have a way to speak up and engage. Exposure is the next thing. Make sure we're getting exposure to people and places and ideas and experiences. This is probably the best way to expand and grow and become our best selves, is make sure that, and if you were to show me your calendar, your schedule, and your plan, does the rest of this year reflect your commitment to exposure, to all the wonderful things right around you and all the wonderful things all over the globe. We have to expose ourselves and our children to all the good that's out there and even some of the terrible stuff that's out there in an appropriate way so we understand it. Because naivete is extremely dangerous. It makes us weak and vulnerable. So sometimes we're afraid of it. We want to avoid it and stay away from it, right? Because it's bad, it's evil. We'd rather pretend it's not there and kind of cover our eyes and keep our kids from it. And when they're little, there's a time for that. When they're bigger, there's not. Because again, I want to reiterate this. We think sometimes not knowing is better. It's not. It makes us weak and vulnerable. We have to adequately and appropriately expose in the right way our kids to what is out there, what's happening in life and the realities of the world. Because you don't want to leave them, man, naive. There's so many examples of this, story after story after story, of where people who are naive, they suffer the most because they were too sheltered, too protected, too ignorant of things, and they became terrible victims and have a hard time really even processing all of it. There's tons of psychology around it, sociology around it. There's lots of research, but we don't want our kids to be, or ourselves, to be naive and vulnerable and weak and in a dangerous spot. So make sure we're getting out there a lot. Practice doing hard things. You know, it's interesting. They did all kinds of research on this, and they found that the greatest indicator, the highest predictor in children of future happiness and success was self-control. Isn't that cool? The greatest predictor in children of future happiness and success as an adult was self-control. And the kids who learn to control themselves, right, carry that over into lots of other things. Now, the good news is self-control is learnable. It's a skill that can be taught. It's not like, oh, you're born with it or you're not. It's learnable, it's teachable. And you and I have a responsibility, a moral obligation to teach our kids self-control. Now, it's not parent control. There's a lot of parents out there who force their kids to do things and they think, haha, there, my kid has self-control. He finished it. Well, the only reason he or she finished it is because you made them and you were there watching. As soon as you step away, the kid's like, I'm out, right? And so they didn't learn self-control. They learned to do what they're forced to do for, you know, whatever that consequence is, the carrot or the stick or whatever. External, right? Not intrinsic, but extrinsic. And then as soon as that extrinsic force or manipulation or whatever it is gone, then I'm out, right? And so we teach our children self-control, to govern themselves, to do hard things, to finish hard things for the intrinsic value. And you teach them to choose that, to do it on their own. Where they say, no, do you want to finish this? It's going to be hard. Yeah, I want to finish. I want to do it on my own. I want to earn that. And it's amazing. It's so transformational. And the kids grow in leaps and bounds when they learn self-control. And they do that by learning appropriately how to do hard things at the right age, the right situation, and you make it appealing, you make it attractive, you make it enjoyable, you make it rewarding. Don't necessarily make it easy, right? When they're little, like I wanted my kids to enjoy nature and the hard challenges of nature, but when they're little and they get super exhausted, I have them go as far as I can, but then I carry them out. The load's on me. I've been times where I carry 2 or 3 kids out of these canyons because I want them to go and enjoy it, love it, and see hard work. You know, you pay a price, you get this great reward. And then as they grow up, now my kids, our older kids, they do crazy hard stuff all the time, right? And our family motto is DDHT, Dennings do hard things. And even my little ones, they say that all the time. Dad, Dennings do hard things. We were just camping out in Colorado and we're climbing all these rocks, doing cool stuff. And Sandriana, our 5-year-old, she jumped across this chasm. And she didn't. She's like, oh, I was afraid because she had jumped across one last year in Mexico and she didn't make it. And she fell in, right? And so this time she does it again. It's even higher. And I was like, way to go, Sandriana. Like, that was awesome. She's like, yeah, Dad, Dennings do hard things. I was like, duh, of course I'm going to do it. Right? It was awesome. So it's her little at 5, she's already grasping this idea of like, no, we do hard things. Right? You're teaching self-discipline, self-mastery, self-control. It's a game changer. Make sure as a family and as individuals, you're doing difficult things. Make sure you know what difficult actually is. I'll tell my kids, they're like, I'll tell everyone I'm talking to, like, oh, it's so hard. Oh, it's so hard. I'm like, no, no, no. Like walking across the Sahara Desert barefoot in the summer, that's hard. Walking across Siberia in the winter, that's hard. What you're doing, that's not hard. Right? Let's get a real idea of what hard actually is. And when you shift your whole paradigm, it's amazing, right? You might think, oh, running a 5K, it's so hard. Well, maybe, but is that hard for a marathoner? Nope. They do that for a warm-up. And the marathon then might be so hard, but what about an ultra marathoner who's out doing 50-mile races or 100-mile races? What's a marathon? I know a guy who lives near here, he runs 33 miles a day. That's well more than a marathon every single day, just as regular training. Right? So it's training, it's conditioning. We need to do that physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, and financially. Right? Leveling up all the way around. Whoa, love this stuff. Isn't this awesome? Again, we don't rise to the level of our expectations, like Archilochus said. We fall to the level of our training. Let me repeat that. We do not rise to the level of our expectations. We fall to the level of our training. Ooh, this stuff's powerful. And then last, kind of circling back to what we talked about in the beginning, build positive habits in your family. Again, you tell me your habits, I'll tell you your future. Your habits are making you, making your kids, making your life. It's everything. You're literally building your kids' future via the habits that you are instilling and cultivating, whether consciously or unconsciously. So fit these habits in, fit them into your schedule, fit them into your plan, fit them into your home education curriculum and session and outline and how you're doing life. Make sure the good positive habits are in there. That's why I lead a class for youth called Habits for a Successful Life. And we read great books and discuss them, have like 50 or 60 kids in there every semester. It's incredible. We're starting again in August. I love it. The kids love it. The youth love it. It's amazing. And it's for youth and young adults. And we just have these great discussions. We talk about the habits for a successful, happy life, what it takes, what's in there, and constantly reiterating and reminding it and having fun, make it enjoyable, make the learning. And then I have a special small group of youth that I call it's MAP, the Mentor Accountability Program. And so I'm in there mentoring these youth a couple times a week in addition to that class. And we have accountability, we have systems, we have strategy, everything built in place so they are self-directed learning and growth and learning languages and starting businesses and doing their studies and cultivating character and habits and attributes and skills that they need for life to launch successfully into life. Because right now we're in the middle of a failure to launch epidemic where youth and young adults are just failing to launch into military or work or missions or marriage or all of it. They just, universities, they're collapsing. They just can't handle it. They're not prepared. And so we're like this, we have to, you and I, we have this moral obligation to be the best we can be, the very best version of ourselves, so that we as parents and teachers and mentors can help our children earn a phenomenal education and cultivate and develop themselves to become the best version of themselves, to chase and capture and maximize their own potential so they become who they're born to be, who they're created to be, to sing that song that they were born to sing, and to do that work, to make that difference, to be whole here and here, and connected to you, and to life, and to others, and wanting to get up every day, excited to be alive, and to do great things and to live a great life. Oh, I love this stuff. So let us know how we can help. We get requests all the time for podcast episodes and topics, or jump in the home education group coaching for parents, or if you have youth, put them in the Habits for Successful Life class or MAP. But reach out, let us know how we can help. You can follow us on social media. We're on Instagram and Facebook. World School Family is where Rachel is in our family, and then Greg Denning. And we have resources on extraordinaryfamilylife.com and gregdenning.com. The masterclass for men, for you gentlemen, it's bethemanmasterclass.com. It's an awesome community, but we're just putting this is our life. This is part of our life's work, and we love this because we grew up without it, and we've studied for over 2 decades and worked with thousands and thousands of people across 5 continents. And it works. It works. It works for us. We experiment with it, learned about it, like, man, this stuff works, and we want to share it, and we keep sharing it. Now all the people we share with are getting all these results and sharing that with others. And we want to be a part of this movement. We want you to be a part of it, to educate our children and strengthen families and strengthen society. And especially in these confusing, messy, chaotic times, we need to be pillars, rocks of strength, and lighthouses of truth that can withstand the waves of chaos and stand as beacons to our family and to others around us, so we can make a positive impact in the world and raise awesome families. Love you guys. Thanks for being here. Thanks for making the time to listen to this. Reach out, let us know how we can help. And as always, keep reaching upward.